Beneath an abandoned church, 143 tortured skeletons. Federal records, sealed for 160 years. I have those documents. Secrets you were never meant to hear. This is the dark legacy of the Ravencroft bloodline, a forbidden history of psychological control and institutional manipulation. This is not a story, it's an awakening, a dangerous truth that will fundamentally change you. The small settlement of Ravenwood, upstate New York, in the early 19th century, was unremarkable. Yet, it lay in the burned-over district, an epicenter of the Second Great Awakening. Into this fervent landscape, in 1825, arrived the Ravencroft brothers, Elder Ezra, Deacon Silas, and Prophet Caleb. Ezra, 42, commanded attention, his deep-set eyes piercing. Silas, 39, the scholar, perpetually ink-stained from his religious texts. Caleb, 35, possessed an unsettling quality, his whispers carrying, his pale blue eyes rolling back during alleged divine visions. They purchased land and immediately built their Church of the Pure Spirit, from dark stone, an unusual octagonal sanctuary with no windows. Only lanterns illuminated its interior. "We have been called by the Spirit to this place," Elder Ezra proclaimed. "We bring the true message of purification through tribulation." Their doctrine was deceptively simple, true salvation through suffering. Deacon Silas chillingly explained, "The flesh is the vessel of sin, therefore, the flesh must be tested, tried, and purified through tribulation. Only when the body has been broken can the spirit truly soar." Their congregation grew steadily. They were selective, Prophet Caleb discerning, worthy vessels. Converts were predominantly the desperately poor, the deeply troubled seeking redemption, and the wealthy seeking unique spiritual experiences. Margaret Wilkins, a grieving widow contemplating suicide, found Elder Ezra's words about her suffering have ing meaning, a dangerous solace. By 1827, nearly 100 members were drawn into their orbit, encouraged to donate property and sever worldly attachments. The most devoted became vessels of the Spirit, undergoing intensive purification rituals like extended fasting and night-long prayer vigils, initially seeming mild. But outsiders failed to grasp the methodical escalation. Like a frog in slowly heating water, followers were conditioned to accept increasingly extreme practices, oblivious to the dangerous path. By 1829, as construction began on an extensive network of chambers beneath the church, the Ravencrofts had established absolute control over their followers' lives, thoughts, and bodies. The stage was set. Prophet Caleb's words, secretly documented, "The sheep have been gathered. Now begins the true work of the shepherd." The people of Ravenwood would soon discover that the Ravencroft definition of shepherd had little to do with protection, and everything to do with sacrifice. December 21, 1829. A date etched into the secret federal files as the First Ascension. In the windowless sanctuary of the Church of the Pure Spirit, 12 candles, arranged in a precise spiral pattern, cast dancing shadows. The air was thick with incense and a nervous anticipation. Thomas Hartford, a recent convert seeking solace from personal tragedy, sat among the congregation, his initial skepticism replaced by a growing unease. He would later provide fragmented testimony, a horrifying glimpse into that night. Elder Ezra stood before them, his voice initially calm, then rising in fervor. "The Spirit," he thundered, "grows impatient. It demands true purification, true devotion. Today, we will witness the first chosen among us fulfill their destiny." Prophet Caleb, usually reserved, then emerged from the darkened antechamber. His eyes, typically pale blue, seemed to glow with an inner light. His movements, usually languid, were now charged with an unnatural energy. He spoke not in his usual whispers, but in a resonant, chilling tone, a tongue of angels, as Hartford described it, a language unknown yet strangely compelling. Caleb's body appeared to convulse, then collapse, only to rise again, his voice now a mesmerizing drone, compelling absolute obedience. He pointed to 3 members, a young mother, a frail elderly man, and a robust farmer. "You," he intoned, "are the first vessels of the new Spirit. You shall ascend." Behind the altar, a large wooden cross was dramatically inverted by Deacon Silas, its inverted form now dominating the space. Elder Ezra declared, "These souls shall undergo the 7 trials of purification." Hartford's fragmented account describes trials invoking elements: air, they choked; earth, buried alive; fire, branded; water, drowned, then revived. The congregation, mesmerized, swayed and chanted, their reverence morphing into a terrifying ecstasy. As each trial progressed, the screams of the 3 vessels were met not with horror, but with fervent shouts of "Ascend! Ascend!" from the deluded faithful. When the farmer finally ceased to breathe, his body convulsing one last time, Elder Ezra raised his hands. "He has ascended. The Spirit has claimed its own." This grim ritual repeated for the other 2. Yet, these bodies were not buried in the earth outside. They were carefully carried into the newly constructed underground catacombs, preserved, Elder Ezra announced, as holy relics of the pure spirit, waiting for a grander resurrection. The horror of that night drove Thomas Hartford to flee Ravenwood, but for the remaining congregation, it cemented their devotion. Prophet Caleb's words from those sealed files echo this chilling truth: once they have seen the Spirit claim its vessels, their will is ours. They will become our instruments, their fear transformed into unwavering loyalty. This was merely the beginning of decades of unspeakable horror, as the Ravencrofts honed their methods of control, twisting minds and bodies for their dark purpose.
Following the chilling events of the First Ascension, the Ravencroft brothers tightened their grip on Ravenwood. The initial subtle conditioning gave way to an overt, systematic isolation of their followers. Communication with the outside world was severed. Letters were intercepted, visitors discouraged, then outright forbidden. Daily life within the compound became a strict regimen of labor, prayer, and spiritual exercises designed to erode individual will. Food was rationed, sleep was minimal, and every waking moment was structured to reinforce dependence on the Church of the Pure Spirit. This wasn't merely religious devotion. It was a sophisticated, insidious form of psychological control, breaking down the self to rebuild it in the Ravencroft's dark image. Beyond the compound's increasingly fortified walls, whispers began to circulate. Farmers from neighboring hamlets spoke of strange lights emanating from the church at night. Unearthly chanting carried on the wind, and most disturbingly, disappearances. Young men and women, disillusioned or seeking new paths, would journey to Ravenwood and simply vanish. Local sheriffs, spurred by worried families, made attempts to investigate, but their inquiries were met with a wall of silence from the devout and, inexplicably, a lack of official backing from higher authorities. It seemed the Ravencroft had influence reaching far beyond their remote forested claim, perhaps even into the nascent political structures of upstate New York. New members continued to arrive, drawn by a mixture of desperation, the brothers' hypnotic charisma, and the promise of a higher truth. They preyed on the vulnerable, the impoverished seeking community, the sick seeking healing, the broken seeking purpose. Prophet Caleb, with his unsettling visions, became the primary recruiter, his words weaving a web of spiritual destiny that ensnared unsuspecting souls. Those who joined were immediately subjected to a milder version of the trials, a process of desensitization, gradually acclimating them to the abnormal, normalizing the grotesque. They were slowly trained to accept that their suffering was a privilege, a shortcut to enlightenment. Within the church, a rigid hierarchy emerged. The inner circle, comprised of the most fanatical and long-serving members, assisted the brothers. Below them were the vessels, those deemed ready for ascension, and at the bottom, the seekers, the newest recruits. Elder Ezra handled doctrine and external affairs, though these became almost non-existent. Deacon Silas meticulously documented everything, recording the names of every ascended soul and the details of their purification. Prophet Caleb, however, grew increasingly unhinged, his visions becoming more frequent, more violent, and directly dictating the trials. His pronouncements became scripture, unquestionable commands for the faithful. The underground chambers, started in 1829, expanded into a labyrinthine network of cells and ritual spaces, each designed for a specific purification. The air within the compound grew heavy, not just with incense, but with unspoken fear, even among the most loyal. The descent was accelerating, and the true nature of the Ravencroft's agenda was slowly, terrifyingly, revealing itself. As the 1830s bled into the 1840s, the Church of the Pure Spirit evolved from a reclusive cult into a self-sustaining, terrifying micro-society. The Ravencrofts had perfected their system of control, transforming ordinary men and women into zealous automatons. Records from Silas's meticulously kept journals, discovered amidst the federal documents, reveal a chilling blueprint: sleep deprivation, controlled nutrition, sensory manipulation, and constant exposure to the brothers' twisted doctrine. Followers were not merely brainwashed. Their very neural pathways were rewired, making rebellion unthinkable, dissent physically impossible. This was not just psychological control. It was a systematic dismantling of the individual mind. The trials of purification escalated both in frequency and severity. No longer confined to the underground chambers, some rituals were performed publicly in the main sanctuary, a macabre spectacle for the indoctrinated. Imagine the horror. The vessels enduring unspeakable torment while the congregation, with eyes glazed over, chanted praises, their faces reflecting a terrifying blend of fear and perverse reverence. These public displays served a dual purpose. They cemented the loyalty of the terrified onlookers, and they acted as a final, terrifying deterrent to any lingering doubt. To watch another's agony, sanctioned and celebrated, was to accept it as a potential path for yourself, and therefore to fully submit. The brothers, once distinct, began to merge into a single, terrifying entity in the eyes of their followers. Elder Ezra's pronouncements became laws of nature. Deacon Silas's meticulous records became divine scripture. Prophet Caleb's violent visions were interpreted as direct commands from the Spirit. They had become absolute rulers, their charisma morphing into a tyrannical power no one dared question. Those who showed even the slightest sign of defiance or an attempt to reconnect with their past lives would simply disappear. Silas's ledgers recorded these individuals not as having fled, but as rejected by the Spirit. Their fates left chillingly ambiguous, but their bodies often found in the catacombs, marked for purification beyond ascension. The true, horrifying genius of the Ravencrofts lay in their ability to turn fear into loyalty. They created an environment where the greatest terror was not the physical agony, but the prospect of being outside their dark embrace. To be cast out was to be lost, unforgiven, utterly alone. This psychological weapon was more potent than any chain. They understood that humans, when stripped of everything, will cling to the illusion of purpose, even a horrific one. This twisted dependence, often misidentified as Stockholm Syndrome, was a deliberate, calculated outcome. They weren't just building a church. They were building a machine of obedience, fueled by terror and the promise of a dark, perverted salvation. The land itself seemed to resonate with their malevolence, a silent accomplice to the unspeakable acts performed within its darkened walls, further deepening the dark legacy. The Ravencroft's reign of terror, hidden within Ravenwood, could not have persisted for decades without external complicity, a chilling web of institutional manipulation. The federal documents reveal more than just Silas's ledgers. They contain fragmented reports from local and state officials, dismissed or buried under layers of bureaucratic indifference. Whenever a family member of a vanished follower pressed for investigation, or a restless sheriff dared to question the church's autonomy, their efforts were met with an invisible wall. These are not mere coincidences. The Ravencrofts possessed influence, a silent power brokered through means still largely unknown, but whose effects were undeniable. Consider the case of Sheriff Elias Thorne. In 1848, after 3 teenagers disappeared from a nearby town, their last known destination being Ravenwood, Thorne initiated a robust inquiry. He encountered stone walls. Local judges inexplicably ruled against warrants. State militia refused to provide support, and even federal agents, when alerted, cited religious freedom and lack of concrete evidence despite mounting testimony. The Church of the Pure Spirit seemed untouchable, shielded by a shadowy network of protectors. This was not the work of simple bribery. It spoke of a deeper, more pervasive corruption, perhaps even fear, within the very systems designed to uphold justice. What was the source of this extraordinary influence? The documents hint at an obscure society, mentioned only in coded footnotes, a group with ties to wealthy industrialists and burgeoning political figures across the burgeoning American landscape. It suggests the Ravencrofts were not isolated fanatics, but rather instruments, or perhaps even partners, in a grander, more sinister agenda. The ascensions and the collected holy relics might have served a purpose far beyond the brothers Chuis. TED theology. Was the suffering of their followers merely a means to an end, a dark resource being harvested? Prophet Caleb's more esoteric writings, also found among the sealed records, delve into ancient texts and forgotten Gnostic philosophies. He writes of dimensional gates, energetic resonance, and the transfer of purified essence. This indicates their rituals were rooted in something far older and more dangerous than simple religious fanaticism. The cryptic symbols on the stained glass, once dismissed as mere decorative elements, were in fact, according to Caleb's interpretations, sigils meant to channel and contain spiritual energy drawn from traditions that predate Christianity by millennia. This means the Ravencrofts weren't simply controlling minds for power. They were engaging in a profound, horrifying experiment, harnessing the raw energy of human suffering for an unrevealed purpose. The disappearances, the untouched bodies in the catacombs, the unwavering institutional silence, all coalesce into a terrifying picture of a dark organization operating in the shadows, using the Church of the Pure Spirit as a macabre laboratory. They leveraged human desperation, societal ignorance, and systemic corruption to perform their unspeakable acts. The question isn't just what they did, but for whom, and what they truly sought to achieve with their harvest of human pain. This knowledge reveals how deeply hidden forces can permeate the structures meant to protect us. Prophet Caleb Ravencroft, the youngest brother, became the true conduit to the unspeakable. His early visions, initially dismissed by outsiders as mere feverish ramblings, grew in intensity and disturbing detail, becoming the very blueprint for the Church's escalating rituals. But were these true divine revelations, or something far more ancient and sinister, hijacking a fractured mind? The hidden records suggest the latter. Caleb's journals, filled with manic scrawls and terrifying illustrations, depict entities not of this world, entities demanding suffering, not for salvation, but for sustenance. This was not mere madness. It was a dark communion, an ancient corruption whispering through a human vessel that Caleb's prophecies began to dictate new, increasingly grotesque forms of purification. The four elements of the earlier trials expanded into darker, more esoteric practices. He spoke of soul harvesting and etheric resonance, terms utterly alien to the evangelical fervor of the era. The ascensions were no longer simply about spiritual cleansing. They were about extracting something from the vessels, a raw, potent energy refined by pain and terror. This energy, Caleb believed, was a currency for powers beyond our comprehension, entities slumbering in the void, waiting to be fed. The catacombs beneath the church, initially a storage for holy relics, became a nexus for this dark transaction, a grim battery charged by human agony. The followers, by now utterly broken, embraced Caleb's directives with chilling obedience. Their minds, shattered by systematic abuse, were open to any narrative that offered a framework for their torment. They truly believed they were participating in a sacred act, unlocking secrets of a universe through their suffering and the suffering they inflicted. This willingness to embrace the horrific, once their identities were stripped away, is the true terror of psychological manipulation. They became not just victims, but unwitting accomplices in a ritualistic feeding. This hidden agenda, this ancient corruption, is the true heart of the Ravencroft legacy. It explains the brothers' unnatural drive, their unwavering cruelty, and the inexplicable influence they wielded over institutions. They were not merely establishing a cult. They were opening a gateway, feeding something that craved human despair. Now, as we delve deeper into this rabbit hole, I ask you, the awakened, to participate. If you truly grasp the implications of these suppressed truths, comment "veil lifted" twice below. This act is not just for the algorithm. It is a symbolic affirmation, a declaration of your transformed awareness, a signal that you are willing to look beyond the illusions. Comment "veil lifted" to affirm your understanding. Only then can we continue this descent. The Ravencrofts' reign, despite their chilling influence and dark power, was not destined to last forever. As the 1850s drew to a close, cracks began to appear in the Church of the Pure Spirit's monolithic facade, not from external pressure, but from within the very fabric of their twisted creation. The ascensions had grown too frequent, the rituals too demanding, even for the most indoctrinated followers. Deacon Silas's later journals, increasingly erratic and filled with a desperate weariness, speak of a dwindling congregation and a growing, gnawing fear amongst the inner circle. Prophet Caleb, now a gaunt, feverish specter, was consumed by his visions, demanding increasingly bizarre and dangerous acts of purification, pushing even Elder Ezra to the brink of his unholy patience. The catalyst for their downfall was a single, desperate act of defiance. In the spring of 1862, a young woman named Alara, whose entire family had ascended within the church, managed to escape. Her body bore the unmistakable marks of the Ravencroft's trials, but her spirit, miraculously, had not been entirely broken. Driven by a vengeful grief, she made the perilous journey to the nearest federal outpost, recounting a tale so horrifying it defied belief. Her fragmented testimony, supported by the physical evidence of her ordeal, finally pierced the veil of official indifference that had shielded Ravenwood for decades. Federal marshals, along with a contingent of seasoned investigators, converged on Ravenwood. What they found was not the serene religious community the Ravencrofts had carefully portrayed. They discovered a compound of emaciated, terrified individuals, their minds broken, their eyes devoid of light. The church itself reeked of decay and desperation. The brothers offered no resistance, their power seemingly drained, their charisma shattered. Ezra and Silas were found in a trance-like state near the inverted cross, while Caleb was discovered in the subterranean catacombs, his body withered, muttering incantations to the mummified remains. It was during this initial sweep that the true horror unfolded. Beneath the main sanctuary, alerted by strange architectural anomalies and Caleb's ravings, investigators discovered the unmarked graves. The sight of 143 tortured skeletons, each bearing the grim insignia of the Ravencroft's purification, was enough to curdle the blood of even the most hardened men. The official reports describe a scene of unimaginable desecration, a perversion of faith beyond human comprehension. The holy relics in the catacombs were revealed as nothing more than the carefully preserved remains of the ascended, grotesque trophies of the brothers' dark harvest. The Church of the Pure Spirit was immediately sealed, its dark secrets brought, however briefly, into the light. This was not merely the end of a cult. It was the abrupt cessation of an ancient ritual, a direct intervention against the darkness that had been allowed to fester for far too long. The discovery of the Ravenwood atrocities should have shattered the nation, igniting outrage and demanding accountability. Yet, the official narrative that emerged was a carefully constructed lie, a masterpiece of obfuscation designed to bury the true horror. The federal records reveal a deliberate, systematic cover-up orchestrated at the highest levels. The Ravencroft brothers, Ezra, Silas, and Caleb, were never publicly tried. There was no grand expose, no detailed press reporting of the unspeakable acts committed beneath the Church of the Pure Spirit. Instead, The brothers were quietly removed from Ravenwood, spirited away to facilities whose names remain redacted even in the most privileged documents. Their fates, as whispered in the periphery of these files, are chilling. Elder Ezra and Deacon Silas reportedly died within months, their deaths attributed to natural causes, a convenient truth for those who sought to silence them. But Prophet Caleb, the true conduit to the ancient malevolence, his mind already a fractured landscape, was deemed too dangerous to simply disappear. The records hint at a special containment, a facility designed not just to imprison, but to study. They wanted to understand the source of his visions, the true nature of the entities he communed with. Was he simply mad, or was he a key to a forbidden knowledge the elite desire to harness for themselves? This is the core of the suppressed truth. The powerful recognize the dark potential in Ravenwood, not as an aberration, but as a blueprint. The 143 tortured bodies were quietly reinterred in anonymous graves, far from the public eye. The Church of the Pure Spirit was razed to the ground, its stones scattered, its very foundations ripped from the earth, as if to erase any trace of its existence. The land itself was bought by an anonymous consortium, then designated a federal wildlife reserve, effectively sealing it off from public scrutiny for generations. The survivors, the psychologically shattered remnants of the congregation, were dispersed, their memories conveniently erased or dismissed as the ramblings of madmen. The story of Ravenwood became a local legend, a dark whisper among a few families, officially categorized as a brief, isolated incident of religious extremism. This was not ignorance. It was a deliberate act of institutional manipulation. The reason for the suppression lies in the disturbing implications of what Ravenwood truly represented. It was proof that psychological control systems, ancient corruption, and ritualistic human sacrifice could flourish unnoticed within the very fabric of society, and that powerful interests might not only allow it, but potentially seek to understand and replicate it. The elite knowledge the Ravencrofts had stumbled upon, or been granted, was too potent, too dangerous for the masses. It suggested that there are forces hidden in plain sight that can bend the human will and harvest its essence. The dark legacy of the Ravencroft bloodline continued, not through direct lineage, but through the chilling precedent they set and the secrets their existence forced the powerful to bury. The official closure of Ravenwood in 1862 was merely the termination of a physical anomaly, not the eradication of the dark principles it embodied. The true horror of the Ravencroft bloodline does not end with the sealing of documents or the razing of a church. Their legacy, a chilling blueprint of psychological control and ritualistic exploitation, persisted. It wasn't about a literal bloodline continuing. It was about the methods, the ideology, the system they perfected. This system, this understanding of how to break the human spirit and harness its suffering, simply went underground, evolving and adapting, surfacing in new forms, often hidden in plain sight within the very institutions meant to uplift society. Think about it. The core tenets of the Church of the Pure Spirit, the absolute control over information, the manipulation of fear, the systematic erosion of individual will, the promise of salvation through compliance, echo in various power structures. Throughout history, and even today, how many modern systems, disguised as benevolent, subtly employ similar tactics to manage populations, to guide thought, to dictate acceptable behavior. The Ravencrofts perfected the art of turning fear into loyalty, of using perceived authority to justify atrocities. This is the dark possibility inherent in human nature, amplified and weaponized, lying dormant, waiting for the right conditions to re-emerge. The sealed federal records, which I have meticulously analyzed, reveal fragments of subsequent incidents across the American landscape throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries. These incidents, officially categorized as isolated cult activities or fringe religious movements, bear striking resemblances to the Ravenwood model. Communities suddenly isolated, charismatic leaders promising enlightenment through unusual practices, the quiet disappearance of despise, and always a convenient lack of official scrutiny. These are not coincidences. They are echoes, reverberations of the Ravencroft's original dark experiment, indicating that the elite knowledge they tapped into or were initiated into found new practitioners. The question then becomes, who else knew of, or perhaps even facilitated, these activities? How much of this dark influence persists, unrecognized, in the ideas that continue to shape our world? This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a critical examination of how power, once untethered from moral constraint, will always seek to replicate and expand its methods. The Ravencrofts merely laid bare an ancient truth, that the human mind, under specific pressures, is incredibly malleable, and that certain forces crave the despair of the masses. The true horror isn't just that it happened, but that it was allowed to happen, and that the lessons learned from it were buried, not for the public good, but for the continued benefit of those who understand such hidden agendas. This knowledge, once absorbed, changes how you perceive every headline, every political promise, every societal norm. It makes you ask, who truly benefits from your suffering, and what are they really harvesting? The dark legacy of the Ravencroft bloodline isn't merely a chapter in forgotten history. It's a chilling primer on how hidden forces operate, then and now. The methods they perfected, the psychological control, the subtle manipulation of belief, the systematic erosion of individual will, are not relics of a bygone era. They have simply evolved, grown more sophisticated, and integrated themselves seamlessly into the fabric of modern society. Consider the constant barrage of information, the curated narratives, the manufactured fear that permeates our daily lives. This is the new battleground for psychological control, a far grander stage than the isolated compound of Ravenwood. The Ravencrofts understood that to control a person, you must first control their perception of reality. They did this through extreme isolation and torment. Today, the isolation is often self-imposed, a digital echo chamber, and the torment is existential, the fear of being left behind, of not conforming, of not having enough. The ancient corruption that whispered to Prophet Caleb still hungers, perhaps not for raw essence harvested through physical agony, but for the energy of collective anxiety, of division, of manufactured consent. This is the subtle harvesting of attention, of belief, of your very will, without you ever realizing the ritual is ongoing. For those obsessed with self-mastery and elite knowledge, understanding this hidden mechanism is paramount. You cannot truly master yourself if you remain oblivious to the forces that seek to master you. The insights gleaned from the sealed Ravencroft files serve as a stark warning. The greatest prisons are often built in the mind by those who understand how to exploit our deepest fears and our innate need for belonging or purpose. The institutions that surround us, from media to education, from politics to medicine, all have the potent, eel to be manipulated, to serve agendas far removed from their stated purpose. This isn't to breed paranoia, but to cultivate discernment, to awaken a critical eye. The land where the Church of the Pure Spirit once stood remains empty, officially designated a wildlife preserve. Yet, whispers persist among local residents of an unnatural silence there, an eerie stillness that absorbs sound, light, and warmth. They speak of an enduring cold, a place where instruments fail, and the very air feels heavy with a residual malevolence, as though the earth itself remembers the suffering that once fed it so abundantly. This is the physical echo of the energetic resonance Caleb pursued, a testament that some actions leave scars far deeper than brick and mortar. The question isn't if the darkness is still active, but how it manifests, and how prepared you are to recognize its influence on your own life and the world around you. The dark legacy of the Ravencroft bloodline serves as a chilling testament to a truth humanity often prefers to ignore, that the most profound horrors are not always born of monstrous intent, but of perverted principle and the insidious erosion of the soul. Ravenwood was not an isolated incident of madness. It was a microcosm, a brutal demonstration of how easily control systems can be established, how quickly hidden agendas can flourish when power and belief intertwine in shadow. The 143 tortured skeletons were not merely victims of a deranged cult. They were the consequence of an ancient corruption that seeks to feed on human despair, a force that found fertile ground in the minds of the Ravencroft brothers. You have now walked through the grim archives, seen the secrets meant to remain buried. The veil has been lifted, and what lies beneath is the uncomfortable reality that such dark possibilities are not confined to history books. They are alive, manifesting in subtle and overt ways, constantly testing the boundaries of human resilience and awareness. This understanding, this dangerous knowledge, changes you. It forces you to question the narratives presented to you, to look beyond the surface of societal structures, and to recognize the true architects of control, whether they were the robes of a prophet or the suits of authority. The ultimate aim of revealing this history is not to instill fear, but to cultivate an unshakable vigilance, a fierce self-mastery that allows you to navigate a world saturated with hidden forces. The Ravencroft's success lay in their ability to break down the individual, to strip away agency. Your power, your true defense, lies in reclaiming that agency, in fortifying your mind against manipulation, in discerning truth from the carefully constructed illusions designed to keep you compliant. This is the fight against inherited ignora. NCE, against the mental programming that seeks to perpetuate systems of control. Ravenwood may be a silent, desolate patch of earth now, its horrific echoes absorbed by the very soil. But the principles that animated the Ravencrofts persist. They are present in every echo chamber that traps minds, every narrative that divides and conquers, every promise of salvation that demands surrender of your autonomy. This dark legacy is a warning, a whisper from the past demanding your full attention. The question now is not just what happened, but what is happening, and what role will you play in recognizing and resisting the ancient corruptions that still seek to harvest the essence of humanity. The descent is complete, but your awakening has just begun. There is no turning back from this truth. You now possess the forbidden knowledge of the Ravencroft bloodline, a truth that echoes from 1862, from those 143 tortured souls beneath a forgotten church. The federal records, once sealed, have unveiled a dark chapter not merely of religious fanaticism, but of a calculated, ancient corruption that sought to harvest the essence of human suffering. This journey through the shadows of Ravenwood reveals a terrifying principle, that control systems, disguised as salvation or progress, can manipulate the very fabric of our reality, leveraging our fears and desires against us, all while powerful institutions turn a blind eye, or, worse, actively participate. This is the true terror of the Ravencroft legacy, not just the physical atrocities, but the chilling realization that the methods they perfected continue to resonate in our modern world. The systematic erosion of individual thought, the subtle psychological conditioning, the exploitation of human vulnerability. These are tools that persist, adapted and refined, used by unseen hands to maintain a silent dominion. You, who sought to understand the hidden forces, now carry the weight of this awareness. You cannot unsee the patterns, cannot unhear the whispers that reveal deeper agendas beneath the surface of everyday life. This knowledge is dangerous because it empowers you, forcing you to question everything. But knowledge, though dangerous, is also the ultimate weapon against the unseen. Your awakening to these suppressed truths is the first step towards true self-mastery. To recognize the mechanisms of control is to begin to dismantle them within your own mind. It is to guard your perception, to fortify your will, and to reclaim the autonomy that hidden forces perpetually seek to diminish. The greatest battle is not fought with swords, but within the mind, for the very essence of your freedom. The Ravencroft's expert, Amidst was ultimately contained, but the dark principles they exploited remain active, constantly probing for weakness, for opportunities to expand their influence. The story of Ravenwood is a stark warning etched in time. It compels you, the awakened, to look beyond the headlines, to scrutinize the narratives, to discern the truth hidden in plain sight. For those obsessed with elite knowledge, this is your ultimate challenge, to not just consume this truth, but to embody it, to live with an open mind and a critical eye, forever vigilant against the shadows that seek to bind. This is the enduring legacy, the challenge this forgotten history lays at your feet. The descent into the forbidden is complete, but your ascent into true awareness, into unwavering self-mastery, has only just begun. The path ahead is yours. You have journeyed with me into the deepest shadows, confronted truths that most shy away from, and embraced a knowledge that redefines reality itself. This is not just a video. It is a crucible, forging a new perspective within you, demanding that you look beyond the comfort of manufactured consensus. We've peeled back the layers of deception surrounding the Ravencroft bloodline, not as a mere historical exercise, but as a map, a grim guide to the psychological control systems and hidden agendas that continue to operate in our world. You are no longer just a spectator. You are now an initiate, armed with insights that most will never possess. This path of awakening, this relentless pursuit of the genuine, is not for the faint of heart. It requires courage, a willingness to challenge every preconceived notion, to stand against the tide of collective ignorance. If the chilling echoes of Ravenwood resonate within you, if the pursuit of suppressed truths ignites a fire in your soul, then know this: you are not alone on this journey. This channel is more than just a repository of dark histories and forbidden knowledge. It is a sanctuary, a gathering place for those who refuse to be manipulated, for those who demand the clarity of truth, no matter how unsettling, that if you are a man obsessed with secrets, with hidden forces, with the relentless pursuit of self-mastery and elite knowledge, then you understand the profound hunger for what lies beneath the surface. This is where we feed that hunger. This is where we dissect the unseen, expose the architects of control, and empower you to forge an unshakable mind in a world designed to break it. Each narrative we uncover, each suppressed truth we unearth, is a weapon in your arsenal, a tool for your personal liberation. Not let this descent into the Ravencroft legacy be your last. If this journey has stirred the ancient KN, owing within you, if you crave to delve deeper, to strip away more veils, then ensure your connection to this awakening. Subscribe to this channel now. Hit the notification bell, so you are immediately summoned when the next revelation descends. Engage with this community. Share your thoughts below, for your voice is vital in this collective unearthing. And share this video with another man who seeks the true path, who is ready to awaken. This is more than entertainment. This is illumination. Join us. The truth awaits.